So I've been reading a lot of trans YA, even though I'm 33 years old, because we live in the craziest time in history, and I feel like I just need brain candy, and especially trans brain candy. So there's this one book I read a couple weeks ago. It's called Felix Ever After, and the main character's father asks him, Felix, if he would still want to medically transition if he had to live on a deserted island. And Felix responds, basically saying something like, well, that's a ridiculous question and completely defeats the purpose, because none of us as trans people have to live on a deserted island. We live in the opposite of that. We live in an extremely social, interconnected world where people make snap judgments about us based on limited visual information constantly. So why even bother asking that question, right? And so my own dad, we stopped talking, I don't know, May or so of this year, of 2020. And one of the last things he said to me is that I was manipulative and a narcissist. Cool. I get where he's coming from, not because I believe him, but because he sees the way that I use social media and attributes those characteristics to that behavior. But I would argue that for trans people, being open about our experiences on social media is not narcissism, it's survival. This is where we find each other. And, apart from one night a week at maybe 1 or 2 bars in town, if you're lucky to live enough in a city, where else are you gonna find people who look like you? Where else are you gonna see the full diversity of trans experiences except on the internet? So I would say every single trans person is their own island. And we are all individually surrounded by water. And in that water, we see fins, and we have no idea if those fins are sharks or dolphins. And so we can either just sit there on our own individual islands hoping for good Wi-Fi, or we can jump into the water and either adapt and blend in with the sharks or learn to swim faster. And it's taken me a really long time to figure out what I want and what that would mean for me. I've been thinking a lot lately about the way that I am visually represented to the world, what I look like, my reflection. And I think especially this year in Zoom land, it's been a trip to start transitioning, to start hormones at least. And it makes me think about the first time that I saw myself in the mirror in a suit and tie, which was at the annual charity drag show at Illinois State University, 2006, I think. And I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror in the suit and tie, and I looked great, obviously, And it was my first experience of gender euphoria, now looking back at that. But then, as I'm looking at myself and smiling, this friend of mine comes up behind me, this other drag king, and he's like, "Don't smile. You look too much like a girl when you smile." Okay. It was kind of embarrassing for a second, but then he, took me to the mirror and showed me how to contour my face and what kind of makeup to use, and, gave me some fake facial hair to make a really bad soul patch, and I was grateful, at least. And I ended up doing drag for a really long time, like never professionally, but I got a couple state titles and I got good at it enough to have a really good idea of which parts of my face needed fixing with makeup, that needed to look more masculine and be emphasized or de-emphasized. And I did this thing after almost every single drag show that right after the show I would run backstage, wipe off my masculine makeup and put on a full face of feminine makeup, because I don't know, I guess I wanted to be good at both and get that feedback from other people. So eventually I stopped doing drag. I wanted to do other things like theater, just try something new. And I realized that I didn't have that outlet anymore. I couldn't dress like a dude in my regular life. And I mean, in my head, I couldn't. And so I just looked at myself in the mirror one day and I saw this, business professional fembot soccer mom staring back at me, and I looked like I had my shit together, but I also had no idea who I was anymore. And that was really scary. So I did the thing. I came out as non-binary because, I liked makeup, right? At least that's what I've always told everyone. And, for a couple of years, that was my thing. And then I decided to take hormones. And that was a hard decision because I feel like I thought I had to earn it. I thought I had to either live or die by hormones. And the decision was made because I realized, no, I just want this. And it should be okay to want that. And I had to get feedback from, other trans friends of mine and validation from them before I finally decided to do it. But, it's been great. Except 3 months after I start hormones, the pandemic hits the United States and I move all of my work online, and I find myself staring at my face every day in Zoom as it slowly, over time, starts to look more and more like my dad. It sucks, and I wish that it were different with me and him, but it's not. And so I just have to stare at his face and then end up getting obsessed with how I look in the camera and how my head is tilted a particular way and how I shouldn't gesticulate so much because it's feminine. And I'm thinking so much about how I look and whether or not my coworkers see me or, think I'm masculine, I guess. And there's this trap, I think, that happens for trans folks where we overcorrect, especially, I'm trans masculine and non-binary still, and I feel like I overcorrected and felt like I had to be the most manly, this version of my father that was also a linebacker and, spoke like Morgan Freeman or something. And if I wasn't that, then I wasn't doing it right, and that's wrong. And, at a certain point, I had to decide that I could either be myself in all of my fullness and queerness and, wear bracelets and makeup if I want to and be trans, or, just slowly die inside, right? That's not what I wanted. I don't think that's what anybody wants. So I think ultimately, if I were my own deserted island, I would choose to jump in. I would be a shiny, very queer dolphin and hopefully love it and hopefully outrun all of the assholes who are angry about it. And the neat thing right now is I get to look at myself in the mirror, look at my dad's face in the mirror, essentially, and decide I can dress it up however I want to. I can change my image of him to one that I love and feel good about. And I get to tell myself all of the things that I wish he had the strength to say to me, like, I love you unconditionally, you're awesome, you don't have to change anything about yourself, but it's also okay if you change everything about yourself. That doesn't change how much I love you. And even though I know he's probably not going to say that to me, I want to adopt a kid at some point with my fiance, and I will get to use this face to look down at our kid and tell them all of those words, and they'll get to hear that from this face, and they'll get to know what unconditional love feels like, and that is really cool.